Well, thank you, Ray, for joining me today. For those that have not yet, my name is David Carrillo. I'm the product marketing manager supporting Engage. And Ray is our general manager of the business unit. And I'd love to start to just learn a little bit more about yourself. I know you've been in the hospitality industry for a long time, predating your time with Olo and Wisely. I'd love to learn just a little bit about your background and your journey and what your day-to-day is like in your current role.
Yeah, Dave. Well, thank you very much for taking the time. It's always fun to geek out about topics like this. So, where I'll start is I actually started working in restaurants about 30 years ago, which I don't know if you can see the wrinkles, but if that doesn't fully add up, I did start at a very, very young age, just bussing tables as like a 12-year-old kid, and worked my way up into out of like an independent restaurant over into a corporate restaurant chain, which I then spent about 13 years at, and worked literally from a dishwasher position throughout the kitchen, all the front of house, basically did everything in the restaurant management, and then traveled quite a bit, opening up restaurants, not only in the US, but around the world. And actually that's how I met my wife. We're
Ooh.
happily married, and, fast forward 15 years of marriage, we have two lovely boys. So deep restaurant background, lots of, experience there, which has definitely given me a lot of like appreciation and empathy for the industry. And I've always stayed close to it. So since then, over the last, call it 15 plus years, I've been on the technology side for hospitality, focused on restaurants, working to solve really challenging problems. And so over the last 4 years, I've been involved in what we call Engage, our product that is focused deeply about guest data, all things that would help a restaurant understand who their guest is and start to put that information to use so that they can drive their business forward, build their sales, et cetera. So to me, it's deeply personal, working in restaurants. And I even started learning at a very young age, just some personalization and making a guest feel, known and seen and recognized really goes a long way to driving them to want to come back. They want to come see you. They want to come see the business that actually cared about them. And so to be able to work on solutions today that does that at scale, hospitality at scale, as we like to say at Olo, it's such an honor to be a part of that.
That's powerful. I feel that when you speak to brands, having that firsthand experience goes a long way in building just that trust and that like authority within the field and just the lingo within the industry. It's so unique that if you're on a call and you're asking, well, like, what does that mean? Like, I've never heard that word before. That could be challenging.
Yeah.
Given you have that background, today with Engage, we speak to brands of all sizes across lots of different service models, and you're talking to a lot of these brands on a day-to-day basis in, formal and informal meetings. What are some of the things that you hear from like a challenges or opportunity standpoint that come up a lot in your conversations talking with brands today?
One, they're trying to do more with less. I would say like everybody is resource constrained. So that's a huge challenge that everybody's trying to overcome. Outside of that too, I think they're dealing with a lot of like data fragmentation. It's everywhere. There's all these systems. They don't necessarily talk. I think everybody's sort of trying to solve these problems. And it's exciting to, I think, to be a part of those conversations, because we can talk about what are their goals, how can we sort of help them achieve those goals on a platform that like solves those problems, right? Like things
Yeah.
like data, consolidating all the data, bringing it together into a singular view for a guest, and then being able to look at that data and segment it and benchmark it at scale across, all of your guests is really exciting. And then the other one is automating workflows, automating your, ability to speak to your guests and do it in a meaningful, more personalized way, but do it so that you're not having to sit there and micromanage the system constantly. So that's the type of stuff that it gets exciting to be able to start, understanding what those challenges are, what is the pain. And it's very common what we end up seeing. And I'm talking even, smaller brands for sure. They're doing, wearing multiple hats, but larger brands too. I mean, even if they have a marketing team, a lot of times those challenges that I kind of rattled off are still real. So they are looking
Mhm.
for ways that they can, kind of solve those, but do it in a way that actually makes sense for their business, but that feels on brand and that they can, really personalize with those guests. So that to me is like what I'm seeing, and it's exciting to be a part of those conversations.
The data part like sticks out to me in particular, and I think one of the things that I've noticed especially for brands who are a little bit earlier on in their journey. I think sometimes people who come from tech backgrounds, I'm one of those people as well, kind of make a lot of assumptions that are not always true. And I think a lot of brands feel sort of overwhelmed by everything that's possible because when you have that blank canvas, it's like, where do I start? You've touched on some of these things already, but if for brands who are kind of earlier on in their journey, is there any advice you would give them on here are some areas to invest time in to make some incremental steps in that sort of crawl, walk, run type approach?
Definitely. One statistic that keeps coming to my mind is that 70% of guests do not return after their first visit with your brand. And so if you just take that and you start to combat that problem, thinking about one, a welcome series, let's introduce that guest to your brand, help them understand, what are the key things that differentiate you in the market. This is that first party relationship that's so important. There's all these marketplaces out there vying for your guest's business, and they're trying to get them and own that business. So it's like mission critical is the way I like to think about this, ownership of data, but also putting it to work for you. So a welcome automation is a great place to start. Thinking about like guests that are lapsing, maybe they were a frequent guest and they've started to fall off. There are things that can be done, and these are behavior based on credit card swipes or based on their last online order visit. All of that stuff can then be put to work for you, so you can start to bring that guest back in, and it doesn't have to be like a discount or anything. It could just be brand awareness or making them aware of a new item that you guys are really proud of as a brand. So those are the kind of things that I think brands should be doing if they think about that problem of 70% of guests not returning after their first visit. That to me is like, like put a spotlight on that problem and go focus on that and put a few things in place to start to combat it and then measure it and then make improvements over time.
That's so much great information. And when I hear words like automations and win back campaigns, some people may think that it requires specialized skills to do this. Like, do I need to know SQL or do I need to know how to do like HTML coding? Like, can you talk us through the high level? Because we're obviously not going to dive into like the actual platform today, but like, do I need to have like specialized skills to do these things? Like, what does that experience look like on like hands-on keyboard perspective?
Definitely. Here's the cool thing is I think like modern tools, what you should expect as an operator would be, or a marketer, you want to see a canvas, not only that has like an easy to use drag and drop user interface. So something that says somebody visited, they did a thing. They had a behavior that you want to then start an automation journey with that. So that typically is like, I want it to be easy to use and approachable. But to me, like what's even more important is, I think platforms should publish libraries and sort of best practices. So having a button that says, what, I want to do an MVP win back, and just push a button, have a template automatically populate, and then let me make small adjustments that are unique to my brand and that I would want to kind of know about my guests. So like to me, that's the type of tool that you'd want, is that it's very approachable, easy to use, it's visually makes sense, and it allows you to then build on the best practices that have already been collected from an incredible, base of other brands out there.
That sounds really powerful. And I imagine like the next question that brands will often ask you in these conversations, okay, we're gonna do X, Y, and Z. Like, how do I measure success? So what are some of the things that Engage helps brands do to monitor like the impact of the actions that they're taking?
Definitely. The North Star metric that we constantly obsess over is called guest lifetime value. Some people refer to it as LTV or CLV. Lifetime value is such an important metric, and the reason is it's made up of things that are all about your guest behavior. So their recency, so how recently have they visited you? Their frequency, so over a span of time, how often are they coming in? And their monetary spend. That's the RFM recipe is the way I like to think about it. So that's what makes up lifetime value. So thinking about whenever you, let's say, deploy an automated guest journey where you're communicating to that guest, either email, SMS, could be push, what are the things that are, which of those are attributed to, driving the most turnout for your guests? So is it actually changing that guest behavior? Do you have a system that allows you to monitor that and allows you to know that, yes, my actions as a marketer are actually driving meaningful results? I can tie it back. Those are the types of things that we recommend that you do. And so lifetime value, North Star, we believe that every brand should be looking at that, not only for how they measure their marketing, but also how are they measuring their operations, how are they thinking about where they go build their next restaurant? This type of data is incredibly important, and it should go into in our opinion, in every decision that you make as a restaurant brand. Like, that should be a part of it.
I love the concept of guest lifetime value. In my past life, I had roles in like performance marketing, and so often we fell into that trap of like, what did I do and what's the immediate impact in revenue? But there's a much broader story to tell. With guest lifetime value. In order to do that, Engage has to get data from somewhere. So what are some of the systems of data? How are we kind of going about and collecting all that to even like make this to report on this metric of guest lifetime value?
Well, it's definitely all about integrations. We've built a guest data platform. Some people refer to these as customer data platforms or CDPs. So it's all about having as many integration touch points as possible. And typically, the way we like to think about it is sort of two tracks. There's like guest touch points of data, and so these are all those things that where a guest may interact with your brand digitally, or potentially physically if they have like a way to then digitize that. And then we also look at transactional interactions. So an online order, a credit card swipe, a POS, ticket, that sort of thing. So a system that you want to look for is one that can stitch all of that together and give you a 360 view of your guest. So in your case, David, I want to know, all of those touch points and have a complete timeline of your history end to end. And oftentimes, if you have been anonymous to me in the past, I want ways to de-anonymize you in the process. And a lot of ways that we go about that is through the payment processor enrichment process, where we'll pull in all that data and we'll start to match a credit card to a guest. And over time, you can start to then truly understand things. And we actually derive, we worked with our data science team to derive certain attributes. We call them smart properties. So things like predicted lifetime value, or predicted churn risk over the next 6 months. These are always on calculations that are AI driven that allow you to understand what are the predicted behaviors of your guests. But you can only do that because you've done the work of adopting an incredible tool that allows you to pull all that data in from all these disparate fragmented sources and allows you to achieve that. So that to us is a critical step, is getting a guest data platform in place. And then that allows you to then make these great business decisions based on the data, but also then activate it, put it to work for you so that you can actually bring those guests in more frequently. They can spend more money. And ultimately, you want to see your business go up and to the right as you continue to monitor.
You also oversee the sentiment product, which I know has a few different layers and flavors to it. How does at the GM, how do you think about sentiment? Where does it fit into sort of our overall Engage stack?
Yeah, look, I mean, your online reputation is incredibly important. It's like almost 9 out of 10 guests will go out and look at their reviews and understand what are people saying about this brand. So to be in control and really just first step is put a system in place so you can actually monitor what is the sentiment of my guests from a third-party review management, but also what are we recommend direct surveys, pulling that into the same system, ideally getting ahead of maybe a suboptimal experience. So you can turn that around, turn that guest into a raving fan, maybe from a tough experience. So it's very important to monitor this stuff, analyze it, understand how to then ideally respond to those guests and do it at scale in a much more efficient, automated fashion. That's what the sentiment product is all about. And I guess like while we're talking about products I haven't touched on, I did want to also mention that we also have a full service solution called Host. So for restaurants that run a wait list, manage reservations, they have that table management operational need. Our Host product does an incredible job of bringing all of that guest data into the guest data platform, and also allows you to then market to those guests, but ultimately personalize in like a virtuous loop of data where, maybe David, now we know this is your second visit, your first visit, your survey, talking about sentiment, your survey was a little lower. We may want to do something different operationally for you. So that Host solution for those full service brands is an incredible one that solves those problems and allows you to be much more efficient also running your dining room. So it's sort of it's a win-win, not only for the operations front and improving your guest experience, but also it's a gold mine of data that you can then drive more guests, more frequently back and again, measure that lifetime value. That solution is great to help you close that loop and do that.
I love it. I think that's the last of my questions. Okay, if not, but any other sort of last nuggets that you'd want to impart on our audience before we call it a session?
Gosh, I would say, to operators, one, yeah, don't get overwhelmed. It's about picking great partners. It's about getting these problems that we were talking about, get them solved through a great platform that you trust. I'm incredibly honored to work for Olo, who is at such incredible scale. This is an incredible company, and the Engage product suite, it's so great to be a part of that because it does help drive meaningful results for brands. So I think like picking your partners, and again, like I feel very lucky to work for a company like this and on a platform like this. So that's like a key thing. Don't get overwhelmed. Start small. Do kind of like what you said earlier, crawl, walk, run. Don't boil the ocean, but get some of this data under control. Own your first party data and put it to work for you. Get it in an automated way, starting to bring your guests back in more frequently. That to me is like, just get that done, table stakes, and then start to then tune your strategy over time to drive your results. I mean, ultimately, every restaurant is looking to grow their business. Typically, that's like the number one focus when I talk to brands is like, I gotta grow. I need to drive incrementality. And so get a great system that you can trust in place and then start building on the successes from there. So that's where I'll leave you.